Carly, my pronouns are they, them, and welcome to my writing vlog where I document the progression through a first draft while I'm running my indie imprint and also having a 9 to 5. And this week starts off with a bit of a weird thing that doesn't happen that often to me. So basically, in the last episodes, I told you that I had given myself an outline for the last bit of the manuscript I'm working on. The working title is Dragon Watch, and then I've laid out basically 48 chapters. 50 is the absolute maximum, but I've done an outline for 48. And I am currently in chapter 42. And somehow the outline has really sped up, and the conflict or the big boom that I anticipated for, let's say, chapter 46, maybe 45, is already happening. And it makes sense, but it totally took me by surprise. And I'm sure that I need to go back and, yeah, just weave in a lot of ends, basically. Or what also might happen is that basically it ramps up from here. This was sort of the first explosion, and then I'm going up one. I would like to do the second option because that makes more sense. But as of this moment, I'm not quite sure to what I can escalate the situation even more. So, for me, it's really the thought. So I've been thinking about the climax of a story. I told you last time that I basically decided to have the big emotional climax in chapter 40. And maybe that is why then the actual action climax follows quite soon from there on. So maybe it's sort of something that I accelerated myself. But so yeah, now I'm sort of thinking I know roughly where I want to end up, sort of with a situation where some people go on their way, some people do a different thing. So basically the company splits up. Fellowship has always been or the concept of creating a fellowship from lots of different people has always been one of my most beloved tropes. So this is also why um, the first movie and also the first book of the Lord of the Rings has always been my favorite of the lot, because you see how so many different people start to come together and appreciate each other. And I think that's sort of the gist that I want to. This is what I want to do as well. Sort of the unlikely company, um, and I have the cast. I think they're quite distinct characters as well, without being caricatures of something. So yeah, that's the point where I know where the direction, where the the destiny ends for everyone. Um, and I'm figuring out at the moment how to get there. I I like action scenes, but for me, they're not the most important thing in a climax. Like the stakes are, for me, are usually not action related, as you have to perform action to get yourself into or out of a situation. But the battle is not the end goal of the book. Or at least, yes, but it stands in for an emotional conflict. I think that's a better way to put it. So yeah, I've been sort of thinking about how to weave those things together, like the action and the emotional fallout. And what I find really interesting to write is having characters who are usually not in the middle of the battle, but at the side. Characters who um, might be watchers or have been tasked with something else, so they can't really participate that much in what's going on. So, and while stuff is going down, especially the way that I created the main character of the series, they are they're not fighter as such. They are like more of a thinker, more of someone who asks questions, and in that respect, they're very similar to Slow, which is who's the main character of the Slow Moon series. They are also like definitely not a fighter. They learn to be more of a fighter during the series, but their main strength is asking questions, like poking holes and stuff. And Wicht is has similar traits. They are a different character as such, also from their um, how they're functioning. But I think that's sort of, in a way, characters that I find interesting to write are those who, yeah, who you wouldn't expect to be there, or who have no business being there, or maybe also characters who would love to be anywhere else but there, but they're forced to make do. They're forced to go through the situation. And they still they bring their abilities to the party. So it's not that they're just standing around. They're sort of interwoven, but they're not the one with the big sword. That's the main reason. Because for me, usually the big warrior with the big sword is the least interesting character in the whole cast. Unless there's something, I don't know, there's a twist about them. So Wicht is definitely not this person. And the captain, the other main character, is has been made into this person. But it's not his what he wants to be. He has sort of that's the function he serves. It's in his case sort of a divine mission. Um, he literally is the warrior with the big sword, even though that's not, yeah, that's not how he started out, let's say. And having those two interact is really quite fun, especially as they have basically Wicht is it's more like how the captain started off, and he almost confronts like a younger or like like a part of himself that hasn't been changed by everything that happened to him in his life. I think that's sort of the what draws them together initially. And this is also where the emotional entanglement comes in. And yeah, so at the moment I'm sort of trying how to make it work. And it's a really precarious time in a project because it's you feel it. You feel the volatility. Is that a word? I don't know, but you know what I mean. You feel the tension. I I mean, I hope that I can convey the tension as well. Um, I often go back when I'm doing the second draft and tighten up these sections. But I really hope that sort of this comes across. That this is sort of the yeah, but the tension is rising, and at some point it needs to break. And I think what this story is going to have is sort of a structure at the end where there's like the emotional thing. Okay, we're getting over that. Then the next, like the action thing. Okay, and now I'm looking for a way to, as I said, accelerate that even further and do a third breaking point where hopefully sort of the emotional and the action one come together. And that's really difficult. um, I've spoken before that this is a really draining spot to be in. So I wonder whether this is why I'm sort of jumping at the moment and sort of accelerating the timeline because I want to be out of that spot. But usually it works out if I'm just go with the flow and of um make sure that I follow my gut instinct for the first draft. The second draft is a different thing. Then I'm basically going back and think, oh, I need something more here, some more padding there, like do it shorter there. So I think the pacing gets more work done in the second draft, but I still need to know what's going on. And that that usually happens in the first draft and doesn't really change anymore afterwards unless I'm really figuring out, oh, I made a mistake, that wouldn't happen, or that can't happen for this reason. So yeah, difficult spot to be in. I I'd still say that we are sort of at the crunch time, and I I wish I wish I could write myself out of that by end of this week. That might be a very ambitious goal to go for, but yeah, maybe that's sort of the where I need to push myself. It's it's a normal week apart from that. There's no event at the end of it. So yeah, maybe I can get there. So that's sort of the um objective for this week is to get over like the whole hump of the end. Um Apart from that, still have a second draft of the sci-fi project to work on. I need to do some work on the website. Um, which I've been avoiding, and also draft my next newsletter. And then one of the main things is that I need to put everything the Sun touches on the website. Yeah, to basically collect all the pre-order links and stuff. And then, yeah, some more admin things. So at some point this week, I really need to settle down and do the stuff that I don't want to do. It's weird that I have sort of a sometimes like an avoidance for the admin stuff at times, and at other times I actually quite enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's a bit like, I don't know, a bit like video editing. It's sort of once you get started, it's okay, but sort of always seems like a big mountain of stuff to get over. So yeah, um, I'm going to take you with me on this week's journey as we're sort of navigating the of the climax of my first draft and all the other bits and pieces, and then I'll see you in a bit. It's Wednesday and I've just been to the market. It's just a tiny, tiny market hall because it's the end of the month, and I actually have still quite a lot of stuff here that I need to use up. So I'm really trying to limit my food waste. So I was really trying to be conscious of that. But there are two things I just couldn't go past. And once again, that's figs, because they are now even like, I think they're now at the lowest price they can get. Um, I needed to buy some more figs. And another thing is that wet walnuts have come to the market, and I have learned my lesson. So I'm literally only buying a handful of them because they go moldy really quickly, even if I keep them in the paper bag. So yeah, that's sort of the food stuff haul. And then I bought some flowers because I could just not believe those autumn colours. I just when I saw these, I'm not the biggest fan of chrysanthemums, but they just, sometimes you just need a certain color in your life. And at the moment, these are, we are just after the autumn equinox. And yes, I'm weak, but I just couldn't resist. So, yes, so we have flowers, we have figs, we have walnuts. Incidentally, two of my all time favorite foods. Um, So I think this time of the year is sort of the best food time for me. And then apart from that, I'm in chapter 43, and I believe I know what the big boom at the end of the story will be. I think I need to shift some sort of blocks that I have put in a few chapters too early to move it to the climax so I don't contradict myself, because I've changed my mind a bit. Um, but yesterday I wrote one of those scenes again that I had sort of envisioned from the beginning and that I was really glad to reach. I think one of the reasons why I like to write my projects chronologically is the delayed gratification aspect. If I would write all the favorite scenes in the beginning, there wouldn't be any scenes left I would look forward to. And also, I think I want to go through this development with the characters. So reach that point with the characters, not jump forward and the feelings are already established, but sort of go through the sort of the tension arc, so to speak. So I'm feeling a bit wobbly about the project. Not wobbly in the sense that I'm quitting it now. I think I explained that before. But wobbly in the sense that I'm wondering if I can pull it off in a way that it's satisfying to me and the reader, like after a few other drafts. But this is the time when I always feel wobbly about manuscripts. It happened at, I think it happened at almost every, like in almost every project I've ever worked on. This is part of the whole sort of dips and troughs, yeah, situation. And I'm trying to, not purposefully, to limit my time with a manuscript. I'm definitely writing in smaller chunks at the moment, usually sort of half a chapter at the moment. When I'm really in flow, I'm averaging about a chapter a day. At the moment, it's sort of half a chapter. But in a way, that makes sense because this is, again, the time where things need to find together, where I need to spend more time staring off in the distance and waiting for the connections to happen. So yeah, it's an interesting time again. And usually a time when I also need to be a bit careful about like mental health stuff. I'm glad that the lake is open this weekend and I was able to book a session for Sunday. So I really, really look forward to that, just to, the cold water and the adrenaline. Hopefully that's going to be helpful. And I think lots of my anxieties make their way into my projects in strange ways sometimes, and I think this one is no exception. There are sort of throwaway lines where I think I need to. So there's some build up I'm doing for the next volume, but it's sort of it's part of the plot of this one, but it's not. It won't really add to how the story ends, how the story is, but more as a like stepping stone to the next escalation in the next volume. Um, at least that's sort of the plan at the moment. I might have to soften these little bits and pieces at some point. Um, but yeah, I think they're often fueled by stuff that's going on at the moment, stuff that worries me a lot. And I think even though it's fantasy, it's still mirroring the world that I'm living in, and the maybe just because I'm creating the opposite, or sometimes just like how characters deal with certain situations. But I always get a bit annoyed when fantasy comes under attack for being like purist wish fulfillment. I'm the last person to deny that there is a strong element of wish fulfillment in fantasy. That what drew me, especially as a teenager. But it always has strong ties to our world, which is one reason why I love the whole Discworld universe so much, because it has very, very, very strong ties to us. And it's one of the I feel one of the book series that has so much universal truth in it and so much really humanness, I suppose. Um, and sometimes I think fantasy is one of the best areas to cultivate something like this. I recently thought back about a time in my life when I had sworn to myself that I would stop writing fantasy because I I was sort of 20 years old, I suppose, 21, 22, and I had the distinct feeling that if I wanted someone to take my writing seriously, I needed to stop writing fantasy, which is total BS. But I got the strong feeling from like everyone around me. And I think I settled on sort of magical realism almost. And that was, in a way, back then, certainly something that was easier to market or sell or fall into a specific category that would get you in sort of the esteemed creative writing world, let's say. And I wrote quite a lot of like proper like novel length manuscripts that are very much contemporary fiction. But there were always sort of elements to it where it drifted a bit into fantasy. And at some point, I realized no, fantasy is where my heart lies. This is sort of the origin story. I need to return to writing fantasy. And the first, or one of the first manuscripts where I did that, where I sort of was after I didn't have writing blocks. I don't have writing blocks very often, but I had like one very, very specific one. And that really messed me up. And in order to go back to writing, I went back to writing fantasy and started off writing in German back then, a whole new trilogy set in a the city setting that I had developed for earlier projects and sort of left behind when I left fantasy behind. And I guess it's important that I went through that. By looking back, it makes me really sad that I felt I had to give up something that really helped me cope. I'm getting emotional, which is a surprise. As I was sitting here, sort of sniffling and trying to get myself back. Uh, I realized that I had a message on Instagram from someone. I forgot about that yesterday. They've basically said, I'm reading your first book and I'm loving it. And I mean, this was my first ever reader DM, basically, that did that. And I'm always a bit hesitant to believe these kind of messages because 9 times out of 10, they turn out to be some sort of grifter online. But I just saw that after I say thank you, they follow up the message with an actual photograph of them holding the book. And this couldn't have come at a better time because, yeah, I was really floundering there. So I thought I'd tell you because that's sort of the okay, this is why I'm doing this. And I said, this is my wife has taken the photograph. And yeah, so there is a there's a nice ending to the segment. See, it's Friday. The weather has turned a bit grey. Um, but I just had an excellent writing session in the coffee shop where I started out still feeling really quite sort of dispirited and wobbly about where I was in the manuscript. Um, and I think wrote myself out of this mindset within the limited time that I had. So I didn't write like a chapter from beginning to end, but I did sort of a middle of chapter 43 to a bit over the middle to chapter 44. So we're definitely getting there. And I've left myself lots of little notes in the book. So basically, what I do is I have a highlighter, and whenever something that comes into my head that I need to check back on or make sure basically that something is mentioned earlier, I will do like a bracket, note to myself, bracket, and highlight it so I can find it easily. And just a like a signal to myself, or when I'm creating the second draft, this is something that needs to be taken care of, needs to be more foreshadowed, or needs to, um, yeah, just get a bit of screen time or something like this. Um, and I think it's, I'm not quite there yet, so I'm still not out of the weeds. I think that's a good expression to be like full in the weeds at the moment. Um, but I think I can see where it's going. And that might be a bit surprising this late in the manuscript. While, like, I mean, chapter 44, so I would have like 4 chapters ideally to pull this off, maybe a bit shorter. So in between, I thought, oh, maybe 45. But I think I'm sort of working my way to, yeah, it might still be like 48, including the epilogue. I really love epilogues because they basically give you the chance of putting it all together and doing a little time jump to show how people are doing now. Um, especially if it's like a series where, like this one, where the narrator will change with every book. So it's because it's a series of standalones with each book is focused around a different character. Um, they're all basically, yeah, as I said, need to function as standalones. And that's compared to where I was on Wednesday and how sort of, yeah, I think wobbly is still the best word. How wobbly I felt on Wednesday. I think we are at a better place. This also means that this weekend I will try and focus on like mental health, making sure that I do stuff that I love. On Saturday, I'm meeting friends at a cafe quite close to, I think there are little lakes there as well. So there's going to be water. And then on Sunday, I've booked a swimming session at the lake. So I will have water around me, be in the water. And I think that's like the best recipe for me to focus and do stuff that's good for me, is just to be outside and to be around water. So that's the plan for the weekend. And the weather might still be gloomy and overcast, but that's now our everyday again. There's still sunflowers in the garden though, the last of the Japanese anemones, and I have a little alpine strawberry that's still producing like tiny fruit. And yesterday I had sort of, because it's right by my door, I had like two tiny strawberries, and that's always, yeah, just a good way to pick myself up. I hope you're having a good day. See you in a bit. I've just come back from the lake and I managed to really lock in when I was sitting there after swimming, and I actually wrote like more than a chapter, which is quite amazing. And I think I wrote the sort of the last climax before now I'm wrapping the whole thing up, sort of the epilogue kind of chapter. So it was a, given that sort of this vlog installment track, this sort of the writing of this climax, the last climax in the book, um, I think it makes sense that I was like emotionally volatile throughout, because that's usually how it goes. So I really, really made the decision to basically listen to more music in the car, not like listen to lots of podcasts all the time who that sort of, I mean, I'm still listening to them, but not like every time I sit down to, because it's, again, I want to stay informed, but at some point I'm really, really spiraling because it's overwhelming. So music, I find, is one of the best remedies for this kind of, oh my god, the world is so awful. I've also finished hopefully the last one through Everything the Sun Touches. there are not too many. I mean, there's still quite a few, but there are not too many markers here. One of the things that's really fun, is that I realized that at some point I made a mistake with the text styles. And even though I had printed it out before, the problem is that the fonts, so there's basically two different fonts used instead of one font. And they're so similar that I didn't notice it on the printout. I didn't notice on the PDF. I can only see it. The italics are slightly different, and then some letters are cut slightly differently. But I noticed it in the copy straight away, which is why I always do a pass on the, like, when the book looks like a book, because I just pick up so much more. I mean, this was just a stupid typesetting mistake, which is also because I'm not a professional typesetter. I'm learning basically with every project. And this is also a new template. This is a template that I made up from scratch. So there are bound to be mistakes. And I'm glad that I figured out what it was that looked like slightly odd. And I was, "Ugh, what's going on here?" And then, okay, it actually is the font that is minusculely, that's not the word, different than the other one. And this is why my sort of uncanny thing was triggered. So yeah, past to this, I'm going to um, work in those last tweaks and have a look at the fonts again. Thankfully, this isn't a problem on the e-arc that has gone out, because that's all one thing. Um, so great relief on that front. But there are still some things where it's really funny when the book's in that stage. I pick up on things that have flown over my head, like inconsistencies where I'm saying this thing, but then I mention something else, maybe a few chapters later on. That because there were like larger stuff, things to fix, I've not noticed it until this point where it's in this state where it's literally just doing the polishing. And that has happened quite a few times. So it's just, that's a mistake, or that's not, that sort of contradicts this. So same thing happened, like with minor things, but still things that I think are important to fix. Which, yeah, can only recommend doing a pass on a book. And so we end this week's vlog with a bit of an end, because I'm sort of over sort of the main body of Dragon Watch now. And after that, after I've maybe written, I guess, like two more chapters, maybe, or one big long epilogue, I will start putting everything together for the next one. And it's always a bit of a sad thing when you're starting to say goodbye to a first draft, even though this one has had its, yeah, wobbly bits, where I literally just, oh my god, I need to go back and fix so much because I changed my mind so much. But that's all part of the game. So yeah, thank you so much for sticking with me through this big thing this week. Give me a like, subscribe if you want to. And if you subscribe to my newsletter as well, the link is in the description. I'll send you the first volume of the Slow Moon series as an EPUB sign-up gift. Thank you so much for watching.